thank all the people along the way, the artists, the producers, the fans, the DJ, the people like you who help to spread the culture around. Because without we working together, we'll never reach where we are now today.
Right.
So I am very conscious of all the people that helped me along the way. And especially the singers that didn't even know that their song would be a hit. And I'm so proud of them when they make that hit and how it feels. And I was a part of what was happening. And when I drive in the car in summer, I drive on Eastern Parkway where you have 5-row car, and I hear reggae playing in all of the cars. Oh my God.
Right.
Just like, I can't believe
it. It's like harmony.
I said, oh my God, they come like I'm in Jamaica, where I come from.
Oh my God.
All of them playing.
Welcome back to yet another episode of Rosie Talks Life. I am just really excited because I have such a huge guest today. All my guests are huge, but this one really excites me on a different level. But before I even go into who my guest is, I was speaking to one of our producers, and he's like, you need to get it right with yourself first before you go out there and give advice to other people. And I was like, that's so true. So get it right and tight before you try and shine your light. Okay, that's just me getting obnoxious. But he's right. Sometimes we have people who just give us unwarranted advice out of nowhere. Meanwhile, their life is full chaos. I mean, like a movie, bombs going off in the back, just like a massacre. But they could stop to tell you something about you. My Lord. And not everybody's going to receive that well, because some people watching you like, you want to fight, or some people like, are you serious? I just helped you out of a gutter, and you want to tell me that you just don't like what I'm doing on this end? Yes, we should be gracious to be able to accept people giving us advice and talking to us and all that good stuff. But sometimes the messenger is messy. And you're like, I could still smell the stench of what you just came out of, and you want to tell me something? People, check yourself first, huh? Check yourself first. I have learned over time, learn to just nod and smile when people are telling you strange things. I mean, unless it's something very harmful or that you have to intervene with maybe a slight suggestion or whatever. But many times people know that they're messy. They just speaking. So you go in your head, note to self, that's different. And move on, because I know that I could have to pick and choose who I'm going to take advice from. I also have learned, and you've heard me say this before, sometimes you think, oh, this person is older, so I can respect what they're telling me. They're messy too. They're some messy old people. God bless y'all. And I go, you have to know what's best for you. Also, if before you go out there and be the messenger of everything that's right in this world, make sure it's right and tight in your world. That's all I've got. I mean, make sure you right and tight before you try and spread your light, because sometimes your light is darkness. I'm sorry. All right. Listen, coming up next, to call my next guest an icon is definitely a fact, but she's so much more. She's an amazing visionary. We are talking today to Mrs. Pat Chin, also affectionately known as Miss Pat. We are going to take a look at her life, her book, which is called Miss Pat, My Reggae Music Journey, and so much more. Thank you, Miss Pat, for joining me here at Rosie Talks Life. We will be right back. I remember when I was a little kid and my parents would have discussions about how they were going to punish me because I won't listen. One listen. One day, I remember we were going home for lunch in the Caribbean, and I'm in the back of the car, and my mother and father discussing exactly how they were going to punish me. And it went something like this. I'm in the back seat, and I hear my mother goes, "Oh, Roseanne really needs a good spanking." And my father says, "No, she needs a cut ass." And I go, "Oh God, this couldn't be good." And then it goes back and forth about exactly how the punishment should go down. And I'm thinking, damn, just going home for lunch and now things looking bad. I'm about 7, 8, okay? And then something goes sideways and the two of them get into an argument. Needless to say, I get home for lunch and they're having their intense fellowship of conversation and they've forgotten about me. I live to see another day. I remember when just being that kid. Good times.
Pip, where's the pepper sauce? Thank you. Yeah, man. Hall's pepper sauce. No other heat will do.
Hall's pepper sauce can be purchased at Sam's Caribbean Marketplace, located at 225 Hempstead Turnpike in West Hempstead, or purchased online at sams247.com. Thank you, Miss Pat, for joining me here at Rosie Talks Live. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosie, for that beautiful introduction. And it gives me great pleasure to meet you today.
Absolutely. I'm so
and
happy.
to be a part of your show.
I am just so happy and thrilled to meet you because it's, first of all, I've seen you over the years, before your book. And I think the first time I saw you was on a PBS, Her Story, where you were speaking. And even my daughter saw it and she goes, "Mommy, this lady is incredible." Fast forward, you were at an event and my daughter saw you and she was like, you know, like when you see a superstar and she couldn't even approach you. She was like, "Oh my goodness, there you go." And that's the effect that you have on people. What do you say about that?
I didn't realize how much, as you said, effect I have on people because I am just being what God asked me to do. Just helping the artists and build up a career in music. I didn't even realize that I was doing a man's job, tell you the truth, until when I come to America. And it dawned on me that when he would say, put on a man on the phone when I was doing telemarketing.
Could you imagine?
Then I would say, "Why do you want a man on the phone?" Because he would say to me, "I don't think you're going to know what I need." But that was the first time I realized that a woman, they think a woman cannot do music. But little did they know, this little woman spent 20 years
But you know, Miss
on the
Pat,
counter.
you brought up a good point there because in the Caribbean, we've seen many women in business roles and positions.
A lot of
right?
different types of business because we're survival. We learn to do anything to survive.
And we never thought to question it.
We never
So
thought.
here you come to supposedly this forward-thinking country and they said, put a man on the phone. Meanwhile, we were ahead of the game in the Caribbean. Isn't that something?
A lot of things we're ahead of them.
Absolutely.
Simple things.
Absolutely. But you are here to teach many. But so let's kind of go backwards for a little bit, like as a young child. So you grew up, well, I want to say a diverse background. So your dad was Indian and your mom was from China. She was Chinese. And of course you had siblings and the whole nine yards. But talk about your childhood, and also was music involved? Tell me a little bit about that.
To your question, growing up, my mother was Chinese and my father is Indian. But back home in Jamaica, we grew up not knowing about culture. We just grew up like everybody else. And then you asked me, we was very poor, come from a very poor family. My mother, she really couldn't read well because in the Chinese culture, the girls didn't go to school because they thought they're going to get married and just move on and do business. But my mother was very, very smart.
Right.
She taught me sewing. She taught me cooking. She said you have to learn to sew.
Right.
Because during those days we didn't have ready-made clothes, so I had to learn to sew.
Right.
And she said you have to learn to cook because when you get married, you have to husband, you have to learn to cook. So she sent me to do sewing when I was 10.
Wow.
With our friend who was a dressmaker up the road.
Okay.
She sent me to go to music when we were 7. I was 7 and my sister was 12. I was 7 and my sister was 5.
Wow.
She must have paid 10 cents to go make us play one like a piano. We didn't stay long because we only know do re mi fa. But she knew that music was good for us.
So who knew that this was going to be the foundation, right?
On the weekend time, she would allow us to go with the neighbors to the church, Clapham Church. There was people that come and they have the church on the sidewalk, Clapham. They had the lamp because that time we didn't have electricity.
Almost like a flambe, like with the.
So we went to the Clapham gospel singing, and we really enjoyed. So that was my early stage of learning about music and loving the music.
Do you think that growing up in a challenging way helped you later on to adapt to all of the different challenges that came your way?
Yes, it does help me being poor, growing up poor, and see what life was, the struggle you have to go through. I remember going to school, not having any shoes. I remember my grandmother used to take us where they would dump potatoes, because like when the crop was overdone, they would dump it because they didn't want to cause a problem with the pricing. We would go down there and take up the potatoes.
Right.
And the same thing with the pimento seed. They would dump them because they had too much. So that's how we survived, by going to the dumps and pick up the potatoes and the pimento seed.
You remember, I'm pretty sure you've heard this and seen this, and I've read it, that sometimes the food that was considered to be the scraps ended up being the best meals, and how people are trying to duplicate it because it was survival then. But then it became entrenched in our, heritage.
Yeah. Organic, everybody's talking about
organic.
We grew up, we didn't have fertilizer because they couldn't afford to buy fertilizer. So we grew up on organic food, which now they realize that's the most healthiest food to eat.
I know, that's why back then people lived so long and lived well.
I was giving somebody a joke that when we slept on the board bed because we didn't want this fancy mattress.
Right.
Now they're saying the bed has to be very hard here to keep your back firm. But that's what we grew up on.
So you're ahead of the game.
We didn't have the luxury of making soft mattresses.
Right.
So there was board bed.
Absolutely. I'm just laughing because things that people thought were to their detriment was really something that was
survival
the best.
Skill and the best of what you can do.
That's true. I was reading somewhere, and I'm going to ask you, who was your role model growing up?
I was thinking about Mother Teresa because she helped so much of the poor people with the leprosy.
Yes, that was
and
a big
then,
time.
As my role model, my two aunts, Aunt Edith and Aunt Edna. Aunt Edna she had 7 brothers and sisters, but she the last child. She was the only one that went out and worked.
Okay.
She couldn't go to college, they didn't have money to send her, but she went up to 12th grade.
Okay.
So when she came to America, she was able to get a job at secretarial work. And she joined the NAACP, Chinese
Amazing.
woman,
Amazing.
and stayed there for 60 years. She didn't even want to retire. She would collect the money, she would send out letters, she would take care of the bookkeeping,
Right.
because that was her skill.
Wow.
And they loved her. This Chinese lady, she gets so much award.
When did she come up to the US? Like in the 50s,
I think,
maybe?
yeah, in the 50s. She came
Wow.
and bring up all the family with her.
Could you imagine?
She was the one that first came up. She was the one that first got a job
Yes.
in the big companies.
Yes.
And she gave her skill to NAACP. She married
Mm-hmm.
a colored gentleman
Right.
that was already in the school system
Up here.
up here.
Mm-hmm.
And then she eventually spent her time for the community,
Right.
helping NAACP.
I think some of that, I mean, I think have it naturally, but that quest to help and being
Yeah, then
community
my
based.
dad and my mom was a big contribution for the community. As I said, when we were young, we had to bag little rice and corned beef, and in Easter time we would cut up the bun and the cheese, and people would pass along the road, the house, and we would give it to them.
Wow.
My father used to tell me, if you think we are poor, there are much more poorer people than us. So we learn at an early age to
Can you
help
speak to the
others.
banana story that you shared
I'll
with me
tell you
before?
about the banana story.
Yes.
This man was so hungry and he got a banana. And he said, thank you, Lord, I got a banana to eat today. So he peeled the banana and enjoyed it. And he threw the skin behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And here is it, another man came and said, pick up the banana skin and said, thank you, Lord, I get a banana skin to eat today.
Powerful, powerful. So, one of the things that I want to touch on is, I mean, first of all, your book. I mean, please get this book. It will not disappoint. There are great stories. There are love notes in here. There are memories. There are wonderful pictures. It's almost a historic journey. It's a journey. It's historic as well. But Miss Pat, I mean, still a stunner, but stunner. Okay, like gorgeous. Let's talk about when you met your Vincent, Randy. How did you meet this man? Talk to me. And so VP means Vincent and Patricia. VP Records. So let's talk about the V in your life.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The V in my life, well, going backward, my father wanted to work in the bank because that was a prestigious
Right.
jobs at that time. I eventually didn't like that. I went to be nursing at the university. And then I met my husband because he got a job with my grandfather driving a bread van.
Oh, okay.
Because my grandfather had a bakery.
Right.
So his father and my grandfather were friends. So he got this job driving the bread van. And he used to come service. There's a little shop beside us in Greenwich Farm.
Okay.
Greenwich Farm is where we lived. A little out of the town, but it was a nice area.
Still in Kingston?
Yeah, still in Kingston, but the outskirts east. And when I realized a lot of singers came from that area.
Okay.
Yes, Bunny Lee and quite a few singers.
You're surrounded.
And then I met him. He used to deliver bread, and that's how I get to meet. At 18, we weren't even allowed to date. My father was very, very strict.
Of course, of course.
I remember one time I had a friend and he came to visit me, and I followed him a block down the road and I sent my sister to call me. Come.
That's right. You were unescorted in the company of a young man.
So
Yeah.
when I met my husband, he was about the same age as I was, but he was very advanced.
Right.
He was living in a bad neighborhood, and I guess he was like a bad boy too. I was attracted to him because he was so advanced. I was so naive. With
Like more worldly. Like,
yes, and he was exposed to the world more than I was.
Right.
So I was attracted to him, and then
That must have made your parents
and
nervous.
yeah, my father was
You know what I'm saying? Like, who is
Yes.
this young man?
Completely different from what you would expect me to
I
be.
want it
I
for
want
you.
me for
Yes, yes, yes.
So when I went to university, I stayed up there and he come to visit me.
Right, right, right.
I'm sure he thought I got pregnant.
Okay,
and I
okay.
just chuck up the music for now. I just chuck up the
Nursing.
nursing.
Right,
And
right, right.
he was then get another job to drive to deliver the jukebox, to change the records around the island.
And that
So
that time it was the American R&B.
Yeah, the R&B, he got it from a company named Issa's Company.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And he was supposed to service all the restaurants, the clubs, the bars, and all like that.
Mm-hmm.
They would change the records, and with the old records, we'd buy them out from the company, and that's how it started.
Wow.
With the old jukebox records. So when you go around the island from Kingston, right around, Jamaica, the island.
Yes, absolutely.
I would go with him, type in the records in the jukebox, stay overnight, sleep in the car.
My goodness.
Adventurous life.
Yes, of course. Because you're young too. You're young.
Adventurous life.
Yes.
And I would leave the baby with my mom, and my father was so furious about, you need to stay home with the child. Yes, I had to stay home with the child, but I had to have fun too.
Right, right, right.
So that's how it
But
started.
at the same time, you were learning the business.
And I was intrigued how people, when he came with the new records, people just gather around him. It's like he was a god, changing the music where they could get new music to hear what they like.
Isn't that something?
That was their entertainment. You didn't have money to go movies.
No.
So coming to the bars or the club or whatever the restaurant, put their quarter in it and they get 5 records playing what they like.
Right, right.
Was a heaven to them. So he
What a
did
time.
that for many years, and then after he gathered up all these old records,
Yes.
he went to his boss and said, "Can we buy
Right,
them?"
right.
And I started selling them because they were not available in the store. They were all R&B records that you could not get anymore, and we did so well
I could imagine.
that about a year after,
Yes.
my father-in-law, which is his father,
Okay.
knew a Chinese man had a restaurant, big restaurant in 17 North Parade.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't need all that space, so we rented a 10 by 10 space inside the restaurant, and there we started business.
I was going to ask you, where did you start?
Yeah,
So you started within,
yes, within a restaurant, a little space.
and then word of mouth
And
now
when
spread.
3 people came in at the shop, it was full.
Oh, jeez. So, oh my goodness. So, so you quickly outgrew that.
Yeah, we buy one Percy Sledge, one Dream. I went down to West Indian Record, but it was owned by Eddie Seaga.
Yes, Edward
The
Seaga.
the vice of the. And then he remembered me when he came here. I said, "You remember me, Mr. Seaga?" He said, "Yes, how could I forget? You only come and buy one.
You know, you're on a budget.
When I sell it, I go buy one more.
That's right, that's
When I
right.
buy one turntable and I sell it, one needle, one record brush, I sell it and I go buy one
You
more.
bringing back memories when sometimes the needle would break, and then you're in trouble. My
When I
goodness.
come and buy, then I go back and buy one more and replace it. So we always have stock
So-
in hand.
So how long would you stay? How long did you stay there?
We're very successful, so we bought out the whole restaurant now.
What?
Yeah, we buy out the whole restaurant when we turn half in like a patty store, and half was in the music. So we used to wake up early, put on the soup pot, and by 11 o'clock soup was ready. 15 cents a cup for the soup, a bowl for the soup.
Jeez,
So
that's
we-
a hustle.
Yes, soup, and while people eating, music
Playing.
and they would buy the
That is-
we have
is packed.
Coxon come down there, we have all of the producer come down, and then afterward we again very successful. My husband buy next door, and then we put up the studio at 17 North Parade.
Miss Pat, I think in your blood, marketing just was coming out your pores. Because if you have me to feed me and I have the music I'm listening to,
And the American man that used to come there and sell us the little 45,
Yes.
he said, never see a restaurant with music playing.
he hadn't seen
I
that.
never have seen it before.
Look
But
at that.
well, it's logical because you're eating and you hear
Yes, of
music.
course,
And you say,
of
you know,
course.
the music and one of them.
I think that is so
Give me
funny
more-
because
more
he's
than
like, but
music.
Why is this working out like this? These people eating and happy.
And having music playing.
Because you now have that. Oh my Lord. Oh my goodness. You know, we just spoke about it earlier, but I'm going to lap back to it. When you said you came to this country and they said, you know, put a man on the phone, right? How did you navigate through those obstacles in a male dominated industry?
Back home, we didn't know that I'm doing a man's job.
Right.
I was just doing a job to survive, to help my kids and my
Correct.
family. People on the side were selling fruits. I was only selling a different commodity. I was just selling music.
Correct.
So we all get together. Their children play with my children on weekend time. We're no different.
But up here, because it's different,
they
yeah.
They asked me, they want a man on the phone. When I was doing telemarketing,
Right.
then I realized that they think a woman can know music, and I did know music because I spent 20 years
Behind
spinning
that counter.
the release,
That's right.
listening to music, talking to people, producers, singers. I get to know them just like family.
I heard that you said, well, let me back up a second. So in the 70s, it was rough. You know, my husband and, you know, his family would speak to how things were so expensive. I learned the term marrying things when you wanted to buy one,
Yes.
you had to get another. I had never heard that. But, you know, I learned. But I realized that, too, it was also difficult as well in the Chinese Jamaican community. And I think you said Randy, your husband, well, Vincent, he left 75 with two of your children.
Right.
And then he sent for you and
3
the other
years
two,
after.
your two
And
sons.
the two other kids.
Right, in 77. Why did you all choose New York and not Miami? Because I know quite a few people moved to
Yes.
Miami.
We thought about Miami,
Mhm.
and I was even trying to do paperwork for there, but it took so long.
Right.
But he had 2 brothers here
Okay.
living before.
Okay.
It was easier to just transition and let them help us to sponsor us.
Okay.
So that's why we eventually end up in New York.
Mm.
He had Keith and Victor. Actually, Victor was the one that, when we were in Jamaica,
Yes.
my husband encouraged him. He used to have a little store that fixed radios,
Okay.
and he encouraged him to sell the music, and we used to export the music to him.
Mm.
That's why when we came, we couldn't do retail, we only do distribution.
Oh, I
Because we
see.
didn't want to compete with
Step
him.
on toes,
Yes,
right,
and
right.
we couldn't have the name Randy's like how we had it in Jamaica, because he named Randy's up here. So when I went to register the business now, we were so naive. I asked, what are you going to give the business in? Never know, just a Vincent, just give it your name or my name. And
Look
it
at
become VNP. We didn't even know the significance of VP as
Huge.
president.
Right?
So
Right?
we gave it our name.
Right, right.
So it was Vincent's name and my name come to be VP Records.
And then you said coming to, because you were in Brooklyn for a little bit, I guess,
Yeah,
initially.
my brother-in-law.
Right. But then you said coming to Jamaica, Queens was like coming.
Yes, we went all around to get a place to set up shop.
Mm-hmm.
It was so hard coming to a strange country.
Yes.
You talk different, the money is different, the people is different.
Yes.
Where to send the kids to school,
Right,
where to set up shop, where to live.
right.
We didn't, it's so hard.
Wow.
And to start a new business. And you have to go 20 years backward because we were so successful home.
Right.
But when we left Jamaica, it was a lot of riot and political problems.
Unrest, yeah.
All we had was $50 because they say you can't carry out more than $50.
I had heard
So
that,
we
yes.
packed the trailer with food.
I heard that and sent it to America.
And sent it up here because when the custom officer was opening the trailer, he would say to me, "But Miss Chin, why are you carrying so much food? We don't have a famine here." I said, "Sir, we don't have the money to buy the food." Carry oil and fish and
Wow.
rice, anything that couldn't spoil.
Right, right.
Full up the trailer with food. And
Wow.
music, of course.
Of course. Isn't that because I thought that was so novel? It was the reverse. You sent food up here. You're like, listen, sir, I have to survive for a little bit.
First, we have no
Right.
business set up. We have to eat.
Wow.
So we have to send up the food, carry the food with us.
So how did the community of Jamaica, Queens, and surrounding areas where West Indians live, Jamaicans, work for you? How did they embrace VP?
Well, at first it was very hard. It was my stepson, my son. He would go to school.
Mm-hmm.
He would open the shop, go to school, and come back and work
Right.
for many, many years.
Wow.
Even when we got big and we used to press in New Jersey, 5 o'clock, 4
Wow.
o'clock, they would drive the van.
From Jersey.
God bless, there's a guy named Buddy.
Oh.
He used to go with him in the mornings,
Mhm.
4 o'clock. I'll get the records, come back. Clive would open, him go to school, and then come back and then work.
Mm.
So
They put in a lot of work.
They had a hard life too, because coming up here, we didn't talk about it as much, but we just know we had to come.
Right.
Because the crime was so bad. When
Right.
the kids go on the bus, you don't know if they're going to come home
Come out
because
alive. Right.
everything was upside down.
Right. Right.
You know, when you're in a crisis, you don't think, you just have to move.
Autopilot. Yes.
Yeah, you
I
just
understand.
move.
Right.
And we moved without even knowing what we were. He had a sister, so he lived in the basement for 3 years with his sister. The washer down there, the boiler down there, when they come up, all the pot them burn up. Because in Jamaica they know to cook.
Right.
So them have to learn to cook, and we never know about rice cooker.
Right.
So when I come up, I can throw all of the pot
Oh
them
my
because
God.
them trying to learn to cook, but the rice them
Jeez.
is always burning up.
Jeez.
So they eat TV food, so they're tired of TV food, and they have to learn to cook.
Right.
So
Right.
he, my husband, my first son, and my stepson, the 3 of them came up, live in the basement almost 3 years because we had to get the papers and have it ready to the
Correct.
proper way to come
Mhm,
up. That's 3
mhm.
years after I took back my daughter and my other son came up, the 3
Oh,
of us.
okay. So, I mean, I like the fact that even though you came up in like 77 and your husband 75, but in the 70s, that your connection remains so strong to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Like,
Because we
right.
just talk what the people want. I usually cry sometimes, Chris. Mom, the people sending back the record. I said, don't worry about that, Chris. Take them back. Somebody else will like them.
Mhm.
Give them what they can sell.
Mm-hmm,
I teach him everything I learned
mm.
about the business. And him grew up in the business. And that's how we survive,
So, I just want to pivot for a little bit. I read about your grandson Joel, and that touched me.
Yeah.
And my hat does go out to you because I understand that is something that will forever stay with you. But you talked about his talent, like he had a natural gift. I mean, and that to me lets me know that your DNA is strong in this business. Like you could trust his.
Yes. He grew up in the business, and he was such a kind, loving soul.
Mm-hmm.
He would take them in the studio, he would praise them, he would help them, he would teach them. And most of the big hits that we usually have, like Sean Paul and those bigger hits,
Right.
he was the one that brought them and recorded them,
Yes.
stay with them.
Yes. Nurture them,
Nurture
God. Right.
them,
Right.
right,
Absolutely.
And he did most of the big hits.
And you needed that kind of ear and eye
yeah,
for the new.
because he went down and stayed for a time and lived there, and
Okay.
he knew them very well, and
That-
they become friends. Other than being a business, they become friends.
Absolutely. I could see where when you break bread with people, they become
Yeah.
more than friends. It's a
And I learned
connection.
that from my dad.
Mm.
He's
Mhm.
always knowing that these are the people that work with you. These are the
Right.
people that bring you where. Because if we didn't have customers and friends and relatives and the community that support us, we wouldn't have VP Records. They are the one that support us and encourage us by buying the products
Right.
so that we can survive.
Without
and we
a
have
doubt.
money to
Without a
send
doubt.
back to the artists.
And I mean, can you speak to some of these really big artists? I mean, I don't listen. You sit here and Miss Pat is throwing you off because she just seems like this woman that you love and but this lady is an icon. Talk to us about all of these
Yeah,
artists.
we
Shaba. I mean, let's go.
We all the while make sure that we embrace the talent.
Yes. Yes.
There's respect. Being a woman, they always said, how do you 99 and 3/4 of them is men we deal with.
Absolutely.
So there's a matter of respect.
Right. How you carry yourself and what you expect
and what you
from
expect,
them.
and
Absolutely.
that's how we do it in many, many years. You know, Shaba, Sean Paul, Barry Salmon,
Yes.
all of them. Sizzler.
What's
Visual
names of
Vibration.
people? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and just
Dennis
one after.
Brown, everybody.
When
We
I
just
kept
knew
reading
each
these
of
names,
them
it was blowing my
individually.
mind. It was blowing.
And it's like when they're on stage, you're a different person. When they sit down and have bread with me, we chat. and
Right.
Ordinary, nice, beautiful people.
Right. Right.
First time I go to a show and I see Lady Saw, when me and her sit
Right.
down and chat, and she's so quiet. And when I see her on the show, I could never believe she just turned like a.
You're like, what is going on? It's the
like
persona.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
it's like a butterfly just from.
You're like,
from a
Katrina,
lava-
what is
from
going
a
on
lava
here?
right
Right.
into a butterfly, and
Oh,
she just,
wow.
she was so different. I was so surprised that they know that just shift like that.
But you know, I think you would know this too. Many times, artists are really sometimes very reserved people.
Yeah, they said Michael Jackson was like that, very
Absolutely.
quiet and sober.
Eddie Murphy.
And Eddie Murphy. A
Yeah.
lot of them that, you know, they are like that. When they go on this stage, they're different.
Yeah, they have this
They
whole
have a
different, yeah,
personality
Correct.
completely.
right.
This gentleman, you
Huh.
should see him on stage.
I believe
When he started to do the music.
we're
Oh
talking
my, he's a
about
different person.
Mr.
You see
Leroy
right there?
Graham. He's
Leroy.
off camera and he's
Yes.
blushing. You hear him giggle.
Yeah,
One day,
he's such a in command of his music
I'm
and the
going to have
people
him
that
on the
he
show.
surrounds
I
himself
promise you
with.
that.
All the musicians that must look up to him like.
Wow, wow.
He's
You
so-
see,
he's so
I'm gonna
kind
get his
and loving.
autograph before he
Kind and
leaves.
loving, he'll pick up the musician even though they, I tell you, this is so gifted. God
I believe
gifted.
you. As he
Yes,
blushes,
yes.
that's okay,
Yes,
sir.
I
will
when I
grab
see him
you.
on stage, he's a different person.
A whole other-
so
absolutely.
much in demand and.
But that
so
just lets you
relaxed.
know that, you know, in this business, sometimes there is smoke and mirrors as well, because everybody is not always on this high level of energy, and, you know, there's a different side, and there's a private side to them, there's family, there's business, and, you know, the perception of reggae music just being, you know, I think though, over the years, and due to your help and, you know, your company pushing it in that way, that it has become mainstream and
And then I want to thank all the people along the way, the artists, the producers, the fans, the DJ,
Absolutely.
people like you who help to spread the culture
Absolutely.
around. Because without we working together, we'll never reach where we are now today.
right.
So I am very conscious of all the people that helped me along the way. And especially the singers that didn't even know that their song would be a hit. And I'm so proud of them when they make that hit and how it feels. And I was a part of what was happening. And when I drive in the car in summer, I drive on Eastern Parkway where you have 5-row car, and I hear reggae playing in all of the cars. Oh my God!
Right.
Just like I can't believe
It's like
it.
harmony.
I said, oh my God! They come like I'm in Jamaica, where I
Right.
come from.
Oh my
All of
God.
them playing reggae, and 99% of the songs are our songs. Either we distribute it or we produce it or something. But most of the songs that they play, Leroy, you can know that we have something to do with it. So that's the. I'm so proud of.
That's
of,
profound. And I think in closing, where would you like to see VP go, like in the future? Like, what would you like to see happen?
First of all, I would have on my my gravestone say, I hope I was a good mother.
I think that's a given. I think that's a
And
given.
then I would tell them to continue if they feel like that's what they want, but I wouldn't force them to continue. I'm sure that one or two of them will continue the business, maybe in a different way, but to really give back to others is my dream, to be able to help others, whether in music or whatever they feel to do, but never forget where they're coming from. Be fair and honest in whatever they do, and teach what you learn to others.
When I tell you, this interview, you did not disappoint, and you need no notes. You're just perfect. Oh my goodness. Miss Pat, my Reggae Music Journey can be bought on Amazon. It's online.
Reggae.com, yes.
Yes.
All over.
All over.
In Jamaica too. We
Yes.
have 5 stores that carry it at the airport, 2 airports. We have it at Alpha Boy School, which is one of my charity.
Oh wow.
Yes, so many schools in Jamaica are my charity. And we are contributing the books to libraries free if
Yes.
they request it.
Right. And the proceeds
and
go
schools, and the proceeds will go for the Vincent and Pat
Pat's
Foundation.
You know, in life you have an opportunity to meet someone who, to me, it's a natural game changer. It has truly been such a pleasure and honor to just have this conversation with you. It is as if I've known you, and it is a joy to hear just how you move through this life with integrity and with fairness and with graciousness, and how savvy and sharp, and just, I mean, this is something that's within your spirit, and I only wish you continued success, perseverance, many, many more years of having your finger on the thumb of what it is to run and be a part of this great establishment that you created, Vincent and Pat VP Records. I want to thank you for joining me here at Rosie Talks Life. I mean, a true honor, a true honor.
Thank you very
My
much,
goodness.
Rosie, for what
Oh
you
my
do.
goodness.
Because this wasn't like people like you to spread the culture and the music
Oh
and
my
to
goodness.
embrace others. We
Thank
wouldn't
you.
reach where we are. So
Oh,
thank you very,
Same
very
here.
much also.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And above all, we have to thank the one above.
Without a doubt. Without a
And he
doubt.
guide us as long.
As I always say, bless up. Bless up. And please join me again on another episode of Rosie Talks Live. Again, the wonderful Miss Pat Chin.